Anybody that's able to join me early, thank you so much for coming just a little bit early. It means a lot to me. I've got a big show tonight. And speaking of commercial things, so this week we are delving into commercial posing and modeling products. So this is actually, in my opinion, one of the most important weeks of this whole course, because this is the bread and butter of modeling. If you want this to be your career, commercial modeling is where you make your money. When most people think about commercial modeling or modeling in general, they often say, like, I want to be a fashion model. And being a fashion model is actually different than what you think it is. Most people think a fashion model is like when you see Bella Hadid wearing Balenciaga, trying to advertise Balenciaga or whatever it is. That would actually be considered commercial modeling. So whenever you're trying to sell a product, that would be commercial. And then fashion is usually more like those high fashion editorials. That's the ones where you'll see Coco Roche like going like, wow, like doing these crazy poses in these like really high fashion kind of like editorial, really theme-based shoots. Commercial modeling is when you're modeling products. So like when you're, say, modeling e-commerce for a website, you're trying to sell the t-shirts, you're trying to sell a lipstick. Whenever you walk into Sephora, and you see somebody that has their lipstick on and they're trying to sell a lipstick on a big poster, which I think is what most people really want when they start modeling, because it's fun. Who doesn't want to see themselves places? That is actually what you're thinking of. So commercial modeling is very, very important because that's where the money is. High fashion modeling very often is just unpaid unless you're Coco Roche. So like if you're doing a magazine editorial, most of the times everybody's collaborating, doing TFP, which means trade for print. So everybody is just donating their time to, say, get the tear sheets and get the prints and the images that they can use for their portfolio. High fashion modeling is, I will delve into that in later weeks. It is so much fun and I love it. It's definitely, I think, where you can have the most fun. Commercial tends to not always be fun. It can be fun, but many times it is not fun because you're just doing the same thing over and over again, swatching the same lipsticks, doing the exact same pose. So whenever you see like a website or really anything where you see a product and somebody trying to advertise a product, that is commercial modeling. So if commercial modeling is something that you really want to do rather than runway modeling, make sure that you pick the right agency. Some agencies, like for example, if you are local, I know not all of you are tuning in that is local, but if say you're from Vancouver, say like Charles Stewart International, that's very focused on like high fashion, runway, that sort of stuff. Whereas like my agency, John Casablancas, well, formerly John Casablancas, now Van Model Agency, is very commercial based and like definitely focused on like the last casting I got was for like Coors Light. So like it's like that sort of stuff. So make sure you choose the right agent for what you're looking for. The good thing about commercial modeling is you can be way more diverse than you can for fashion modeling. One of the problems, or in my opinion, the problem in high fashion modeling is that it's very strict measurements. It's 32, 25, 36. And there's like no wiggle room. And they usually almost always want white people and they want people with blonde hair and blue eyes or like brown hair and blue eyes. And they're very, very strict. But the good thing about commercial modeling is a lot of people want to see products that look like them, or people advertising said products to look like them, which is something you see more and more and more. I don't know if you guys watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but I do. And last week was all about how Good American was one of the first brands to have 3 different models modeling a product. So you'll see that on, say, for example, Good American, or if you've ever shopped on Fenty or something like that, you can choose a different model. So they'll have like smaller models, bigger models, black models, all sorts of stuff like that. So you do actually have a lot more wiggle room. Like I generally work as a commercial model, and I am not those high fashion measurements whatsoever, but that's okay because people usually when they're trying to buy a product, they want to envision it on themselves. So someone that's more my size is a little bit more realistic and something that people actually really enjoy. So that's basically what commercial modeling is. The next thing I have written down to talk about is how do you know when you're on a commercial shoot? So a commercial shoot is when you're trying to sell something. And this is going to sound a little bit harsh, but it's not about you. So the big thing about the commercial modeling is it's all about selling a product. It's not about you and how you look and like how all of these, like a lot of times people will show up to set, and I've had this with, say, models I've hired for my own brand, where they think it's all about them. They'll show up and they want to change the earrings because they don't like the earrings that you're supposed to wear. Don't do that. Do what you're told. And if they want you to wear a pair of earrings, just wear those earrings, right? Because the goal is less so to think about how you always look your perfect best, like maybe you would in high fashion, and more about how to make the shirt look its best, because you want people to buy it. So that kind of brings me to our first section here, which is, what are you trying to sell? So that's the very first thing you want to ask yourself whenever you're doing any commercial gig is, what am I trying to sell? For one, who am I trying to sell it to? And what is the product that I'm trying to sell? So there's a lot of things like that. Like, say if you're selling jewelry, for example, you wouldn't want to cover your ears and do these kind of poses, right? Because you're covering up the jewelry. And like I said, it's not about you, it's about the jewelry. So you want to go into every shoot as prepared as you can. So you can't always do this, like say if it's a startup or if it's like where they don't have a lot of information for you to go off of. But say if I'm getting hired for a job like what's an example? I did Glee Jewelry not that long ago, a couple months ago or something like that. You go on the Glee Jewelry website and you see the vibe. You see what they're trying to do. Like, Glee Jewelry was very light. It was very airy. It was very smiley. They're trying to appeal to the kind of boho aesthetic. So from there, I can kind of modify what I'm trying to do. 9 times out of 10, commercial modeling is really light and airy, which is why I have split this into 2 parts. I've split it into just what commercial modeling is and then smiles, because smiling is very important with commercial, and there's all different types of smiles. Like, for example, if you're trying to sell, like, for example, that Glee Jewelry shoot, I'm not going to be staring into the camera like super fierce, like that kind of stuff, right? I'm going to be laughing and holding flowers and just like trying to sell this like light and airy aesthetic. So most of the time it is light and airy, which kind of and one thing to think of as well, along the lines of what you're trying to sell, is if you're trying to sell multiple products or if you're just trying to sell one product. So sometimes you will get a job where they have a new hoodie launch and there's only one hoodie, there's one color, they just really need photos of this new hoodie. And then that does give you the ability to have a little bit more variation versus, say, if you need to do 12 of the same colors of hoodie, that might make you adjust how you're going to pose from there. Which kind of brings me into my next section, which is simple rules for commercial. So the first rule that I always say whenever you're on a commercial shoot, and I know I keep repeating this over and over again, but you look more professional if you ask questions than if you just assume. So a lot of people don't want to ask questions. They don't want to ask what they're supposed to do or what they're supposed to look like, because they think that it will make them look like they don't know what they're doing. But the truth is actually the opposite. If you ask the right questions, it will look like you know what you're doing, because you actually are adjusting what you need to do for what they want. So when you arrive to a commercial set and it's about time to sort of start shooting and stuff, ask them, what would you like? Would you like me to be smiley? Would you like me to be light? Would you like me to be more fierce? Do you want it to be more straight on? Because, like, for example, if you are modeling, say, t-shirts for e-commerce, lots of times they will want you to just be like straight on t-shirt, side, back, other side, and then maybe a couple interesting poses, and then you're going to want to replicate that for each shirt. So if you are doing like big dramatic poses and they just want the shirt, then that's kind of not what they're looking for. So asking those sorts of questions so that you're actually doing what they would like is really important. So don't be afraid to ask. It's always better to ask more questions. So that's the first question I would always ask. And then bringing it back to last week, don't forget to ask which one is your key light. That's always important. Make sure to keep track of your key light. That's a good question to ask as well. As well as definitely ask, is it for econ or is it for social? Because that will change things. Second rule that I would say is definitely do not cover up a logo. So be very conscious of people's logos. Like for example, my clothing brand, I've got a Liberate like right here. If you're going to be doing poses like this, especially if you're like more masculine, this is a very like common pose that you do a lot, right? Where you're like kind of grabbing at your shoulder, kind of doing this, bringing yourself across, because it creates a really strong arm and generally is very flattering. So it's a very common pose. If I have a logo right here, don't do that, because you have to show off the logo. So be conscious of that. Same things with women. A lot of times when you bring things together, you have boobs. And if they fold a logo and the logo looks kind of like triangular, that's not something that you want to do either, right? So be conscious of that when you're wearing clothes. Just like look around, see where it is and what it is. Same thing with like, say if you're modeling jewelry and you have a bunch of rings on this hand, you might want to bring your hand up so that you can see the rings you're trying to sell. You want to sell this ring. Like for example, this is not nearly as, you're probably not going to see the ring nearly as much as if it was up here, right? So obviously that's not a perfect pose, but you want to be able to see things, right? Or the same sort of stuff with like, if you're wearing like big baggy pants or whatever, like make sure that you sort of like have your legs in a way that you can see that they're nice big baggy pants, because it's all about trying to sell something. And ask, and it never hurts to ask too. Like if you're like unsure of, if say there's lots of things all over it, you can ask, be like, is there anything that you want me to show off? Because you never know, like the producer or the designer or whoever it is might be like, actually we put a lot of work into this zipper on the side, we really want you to show off that zipper. So that's kind of a basic rule as well. 9 times out of 10, smiley, happy, show off what you need to show off. So next I'm gonna delve into simple rules for each sort of category. The first one would be e-commerce. E-commerce is the longest days, but it's where you make the most money. Getting an e-com job is usually what you want, because you're gonna have a long day, so you get, most jobs are paid hourly. Some you're paid for your just the amount or like your buyout or that kind of stuff, but often you're paid hourly. So e-com is when you arrive at 5 a.m., they do your makeup, you're gonna shoot like all of the shirts for a new collection and all of the pants for a new collection. So you're gonna have a really, really long day. So when you're doing e-com, one of the most important things, because you are paid by the hour and they are long things, is you're gonna wanna flow quickly and you're gonna wanna repeat what you're doing. Because you go to like some websites, some clothing websites, and look at the models and notice how the models are kind of doing the exact same thing for almost every piece. And they're doing really simple poses as well. You don't want to be like doing these like crazy fun poses, because you want to just show off the shirt. So you're probably going to do very simple poses and you just kind of show off the shirt like how it is. And then you're just going to go pretty quickly because you are paid hourly. So the amount of times I've had compliments from people at work, like on jobs that I've done, because I move quickly and I make the time, like you get a lot done in the amount of time you're hired for, is great. And when they see that, they're going to hire you for something again. So make sure to flow quickly and flow simply for e-com, and try and keep in mind that you're trying to replicate things. So don't do things like too crazy. The next sort of commercial modeling thing that you'll probably encounter is social. So social means for like Instagram, for Facebook, for that kind of stuff. This is something that you tend to have 1 or 2 images in a clothing, and they're going to use that for ads. So it's a bit different than if you have to have a bunch of the same shirt all looking the same. So back in the day, like when I first started, this would be more like when you see a particular photo, like an ad in Cosmo. Like for the older members of my audience, I remember doing this. Like, do you remember buying Cosmo and flicking through it? And there would be ads all the time. So this kind of stuff is where you end up with like, you'll do a whole shoot and you end up with one photo that they're going to use. So you can be a lot more creative. So always ask what things are being used for, because it'll completely change what you're doing. You may not want to go super avant-garde. Another time that you would want to ask, like, am I going super crazy? Am I going more traditional? Am I just sipping my coffee and we're just getting a few good photos of something like that? Because let's be honest, I've modeled for coffee shops. So sometimes you're just there with your coffee, right? You don't want to be like, oh, my coffee is high fashion. But then again, every once in a while, you end up with somebody who wants a high fashion coffee. So just ask what it's being used for, and ask sort of what they're going for. But social, you get so much more freedom, which is fun. Nowadays, most of those advertisements are all going on Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok sometimes. If it's TikTok, it's usually video, and that's kind of a whole other beast. But right now, we're really just going to stick to just photos. But yeah, so it gives you like way more options, which is usually quite fun. I quite like these shoots. So those are when you get a little bit more freedom, and you don't have to worry as much about replicating the poses like you would for e-commerce. These shoots are also going to be shorter, so they tend to still pay you. Sometimes they'll pay you hourly, which honestly is not my favorite, because usually social shoots, they'll be like 1 or 2 hours, and then by the time you do your makeup and you travel and everything, like the payment isn't as good as it is for like e-commerce. But if they pay you like a bulk set of money, then that's nice. Lots of times there's buyouts and things like that, but this is generally left to your agent. If you're freelance, that can be a little tricky to negotiate, but generally this stuff kind of all goes through your agent. I will say that most commercial work does go through agents. It is a little bit unfortunate for us freelance people. I'm not one of you, but I used to be freelance, and not many of my jobs were e-commerce, because for the most part, if they have an e-com budget or like a social advertising budget, they're going to go through an agency, because it gives them that little bit of security, like a little bit of insurance, right? But yeah, so your agent generally will deal with all those payment stuff. But yeah, so social is more fun, e-commerce, more money. You know, they have gives and takes, right? So one of the most important things about commercial modeling, and as I was saying, you need to be quick, you need to replicate things, you need speed, is flow posing. Now, flow posing is something you might have heard. I think I mentioned it before, and anyone that I teach modeling to in person, flow posing is always one of the first things I want to go over. So you might hear that word and go like, what is flow posing? Like, what does that even mean? It basically means like you're going to hit a pose, you're going to move, you're going to hit another pose, you're going to keep going. So that basically, instead of just standing there and going like, and waiting for a few poses to be taken, and then you're going to sort of go to something else, and you're going to stand here for a little while, you want to keep moving. That way the photographer can just kind of go click, 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 click. That being said, one of the biggest pitfalls, people that I see that sort of know what they're doing, they have a little bit of practice, they understand that they need to flow, but they don't really know how to flow just yet, is you will see people being a little bit too fluid, right? So instead of thinking like this to catch all of the photos of all of your arm going, it's a little bit more of a, right? Because you want the photographer to be able to get you not quite in motion. So you don't want a big blurry arm that is just swooping along. You want it to be able to go doot, 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 doot. So you can get the photo, or she can get the photo at each option. One of the best ways that I like to think about it is you hear the camera click, you move. You hear the camera click, you move. You hear the camera click, you move. You might see photos or videos on TikTok and stuff like that of, say, Coco Roche doing her flow posing, which is iconic and amazing. And one thing I have to say is you're going to see a lot of videos of very experienced models flowing when you Google it. And they're going to go bam, 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 and do these big, huge poses and change them a lot between their poses. I don't recommend that for someone that's just starting whatsoever. When you're just starting, really play with your angles in between. I kind of like to think of a rule of threes, which I know a few of you are photographers, so you're going to go, Paige, that's not what the rule of threes is, but it's my rule of three. So that's what I'm saying. Is you kind of do 3 similar poses and then move on to another pose. So for example, if I'm going like bop, 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 I'm going to want to sort of do this pose 3 times. So you'll go like something like that, mild variations of the same thing. And then I'll move to over here and I'll go bop, bop, bop. Little small changes. Or like say if you have your hands up, you'll go something like that, where it's just little subtle variations, and then we'll be able to pick the best one from there, or whoever is picking will be able to pick the best one from there. Because you don't want to move around too much when you're first starting. Because when you're first starting, you might not get it right the first time, and you don't want to miss that pose. So a lot of times, most poses can be fixed by little subtle tweaks, right? So there'll be times where, you know, you're looking over your shoulder and you think you look so glamorous, but your chin's just a little bit too high, and you kind of going like this. If you give yourself a few options of your chin, then you won't have, like, you're less likely to miss getting that shot. Because sometimes you can have a great pose and it's just a little off, and that is like not ideal. One of my best tips for learning to flow is, if you're 19 plus, have a glass of wine, not too many, just one, and put on some music that you love, something fast paced and something kind of slow. You can kind of mix it up as well, because you will find that different photographers will have different speeds. And sit in front of the mirror, and when you hear the beat, so you know how to count a beat, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because I feel like when people see flow happening, it looks more like dancing than it looks like modeling. Or at least to me, that's what I thought. I remember when I was young and watching America's Next Top Model when I was a little girl, I was like, oh my God, like they look like they're just dancing and having so much fun. Which is a big reason why on a lot of sets, they'll always put music. If I'm ever doing anything in the studio here where we have models going, I always put on some music that's loud enough that they can hear it. It's not overpowering, so they don't feel like they're in a nightclub. And something with a steady rhythmic beat. It gives you something to go off of. Unfortunately, they don't always do that on set, but 9 times out of 10, if you're on a commercial set, there will be music going. For one, because it's a long day and people need stuff to like listen to and to do. And 2, it really helps. So sit in front of the mirror and practice. And this is something I cannot repeat more, and I feel like I repeat this every single week, is that this is not a natural gift, it's a skill. And like any skill, you practice. You have to go to soccer practice, or else you're not going to win the soccer game. So sit down, practice, put on some music, sit in front of a mirror and see what works for you. Because like I, for example, know that I've got a very strong jawline, so I can get away with having my chin quite high and it still look pretty snatched. So like you learn those things about your face by practicing. Sit in front of the mirror with music. It helps to have a glass of wine just because it makes your night a little bit more fun, in my opinion, and it kind of loosens you up a little bit. But you also don't have to if you don't drink. But just a tip to make a little night out of it. Make it a fun night. Put on some music you like, have something you enjoy, and just sit in front of the mirror and practice. Second type of practice I would recommend as well is do it without the mirror. So when you're flowing, you're not usually going to have a mirror in front of you. So it's good to see what you're doing, but at the same time, you also don't want to practice with a mirror at all times. Set up your phone, kind of like how I have my camera now. Like I can't see anything. I can't see any of you guys. I'm just like talking into the void right now. But I know you're there. So just practice looking into the lens and flowing from there. Set up your phone, back camera, not front camera, so you can't see yourself. And just have it going, press record, do the same thing. After you've warmed up in front of the mirror, warm up in front of your camera, watch it back, see what works. Do note that phone camera lenses are very distorted. Well, all lenses add distortion. A few photographers in here will know that, but all lenses make you look a little weird. So like if you think like, oh, that's like not the most flattering angle, that's not really what we're going for. We're not going for the most like beautiful photos as you're coming from an iPhone, because that's more the photographer's job, to be honest with you. But you want to look at your rhythm, you want to look at the general ideas of what work for you, and you want to practice doing it without being able to see yourself. So the mirror is better for figuring out what looks best on you. This is more for figuring out like your rhythm and getting used to not having a mirror, because you mostly won't have a mirror in front of you when you're doing this. As we're talking about flow posing, there is 3 sort of main styles of flow posing depending on what you're trying to advertise. So we actually have some BTS footage here that my lovely producer is going to put up for you guys. I know last week we did pre-record some stuff, but then I was like, I should show you some actual footage of me like actually doing these things. So I've got some like behind the scenes iPhone footage that you'll be able to see while I talk. And the first step of the 3 sort of main categories of flow would be a close-up flow, like a beauty flow or a jewelry flow. So most of the time these photos are taken from here up. Most of the time you'll be able to see, and the thing is my outfit looks ridiculous. I've taken a shirt and I've just like pulled my arms out of it. It's because a lot of the times for beauty stuff, and men, you'll usually have a shirt on for these sorts of things, and you would be more so like advertising like say like a beard oil or something like that, whereas women, we tend to do jewelry and makeup. Not saying that as a man you'll never model makeup, because you're seeing more and more of that, men modeling makeup. But in general, if you're a woman, you tend to either wear a tank top or not a tank top, sorry, a tube top or something, or like just have it out so that it's just your shoulders. So you're really only seeing yourself from here up. So these flows, you really want to focus on whatever it is that you're selling that is up here. If you're selling the makeup, lots of times you would not use your arms at all. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I would vary it a little bit. If it's jewelry, say on your hand, and you have your hand down here and you're selling a ring, they're not gonna be able to see that. You need it up here. So that's when we kind of come into those more feminine, masculine rules that I was talking about earlier. Jewelry, generally speaking, if it's rings and you're more feminine leaning, it's going to be hand to the side so that it's thinner and smaller and a little bit more delicate. If you're, say, modeling rings and you're more masculine, it's going to be hand like this. So for example, you would be, if you're, say, a woman and you're trying to model jewelry, I would probably be up like this, do things like this, sort of like show it off here. Make sure that you can see the ring, whatever it is, or bracelet, or whatever it is. You're kind of going soft like that. Man, if you're trying to model a ring, you might be like this, you might be like something like this, something, whatever it is that is more stronger and up like that. So the biggest thing is focusing on here and remembering what you're trying to sell. So like if say it's a ring, you're probably going to really focus on doing stuff like this. If say it's eye makeup, you're going to want to focus on your eyes, right? You want to do things that will show off the eye makeup. You might want to touch your face a little bit like this. You might want to really focus your eyes. You might want to do something like this. This is generally one of those situations where you want to know exactly what the rule is so that you can break it properly. Always make sure, it's really important when we're just focusing on your face. Eyes to nose. It's very important. The only time that I would say that you can kind of get away with going like this is if it's really playful and you're kind of going like, oh, something like that. But 9 times out of 10, remember your eyes to nose rule and focus on flowing near your face and making sure that you can see things around your face. This would be something for like jewelry, beard oil, makeup, whatever it is, something like that. So the second flow that I wanted to discuss is more of a mid-body flow, an upper body flow. So this is, say, when you're still sitting down and you want to be able to see some of a shirt or something like that. I believe I have a video up of my own brand where I'm sitting down and I'm trying to model a hoodie, because at this point we're not trying to show the whole hoodie, we're just trying to show the logo and stuff like that. So it gives you a little bit more freedom. You can do things that are a little bit different. You may be able to do more with your arms. You may not be able to as well. This video that I'm showing you here was for an e-com shoot, so I really wasn't moving around a lot. As you can see, I'm trying to replicate the same pose many times rather than doing stuff like this. But if it's social and it's here, feel free to do some more stuff when it's upper body. Like I was saying, and I've said about 10 times, Always make sure to ask, know what they want, but it gives you a lot more freedom. And this, you can be, the way that I like to think of it is if it's sort of about here, something like that, mid belly, sort of where your elbows kind of hit your sides is often where it cuts off. So you kind of usually either want your arms not in frame. If you don't want them really in frame, like you can put them down. But if you want to see your arms, you generally kind of have to bend at the elbow. So you can do that by bringing it in. This is something that I just told you kind of not to do. Be careful if there's a logo here. If there's no logo here and you're trying to show off the shoulder or something, that can be fine, depending on what they want. If it's, say, social or ecom. But like you want to show from sort of here up. In general, it's good to be able to see your hands. Lots of times it looks kind of awkward if you can't see your hands in photos. There is times when they just want you like this, which is totally fine. But definitely if it's upper body, don't be worried about like doing some stuff around here. Just be very conscious of whatever it is that you're trying to sell and whatever it is that you're trying to do like this. A lot of times, especially if you're local in Victoria and Vancouver, there's a lot of bridal stuff going on. So a lot of times you'll be modeling with flowers, or the boho aesthetic. A lot of times we'll have flowers. So those are things where you can kind of like cradle the flowers and you smell the flowers and like you kind of do stuff like that. And you're really like interacting with it, with whatever it is that you're trying to sell in that way. So just be conscious, whatever you're trying to do, and keep the flow going and try and keep it up. And the next one I'm going to talk about is full body flow. So this is one where you're going to be able to see all of me. So the video that I have shown up here, it was for clothing, Lisa something. It was for a clothing brand. And they wanted to be able to see all of me because I was dressed from head to toe in their clothes. I was sitting down in this, but you can see I'm still extending my legs. I'm still being conscious of what I am doing with my lower body. Full body flow can be much more creative if you're doing social and very strict if you're doing ecom. Because lots of times if you're doing ecom and it's full body, you're just standing there. You're like, I'm selling these pants. I'm selling these shorts. I'm going to rotate. I'm going to sell these pants, shorts, rotate them down backwards, do that, and then they're good. They're like get changed. So like lots of times you'll be modeling, like I did one once where they wanted me to model 30 pairs of socks. So I ended up, you would do the exact same 4 poses with these socks the whole time. Do the same poses. And you change your socks, go back. Change your socks, go back. It sounds like that would be quick. It still took all day. There was like half before lunch, then we had lunch, and then we did a half after, like 15 socks or something. So if you think about, if I wanted to model 15 outfits in say 4 hours, that's a lot. It doesn't seem super crazy, like, but if I were say planning a editorial shoot, I would probably plan like maximum 3 outfits in 2 hours, right? So to do so if you extrapolate, that would be like say 6 outfits in 4 hours. We're doing 15, so it's quick. You're gonna do the same thing over and over and over again. You're gonna change quick, you're gonna go back. And the more you're able to replicate your poses quickly and move quickly, people are gonna appreciate that. Generally, photographers do like it. If you're doing ecom, go fast. It never hurts to communicate with your photographer because say some of them like you to go slower. I remember I was on set once and the guy was like, hey, I need you to slow down a little bit because like I'm not getting the shots that I need. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and that was kind of a good learning experience for me because up until then I had had so many photographers just be like, quick, let's do this, right? And then I was like, oh, okay. So that's why listening is your best help there. You're gonna want to pose. You want to hear the click because most of the time, unless it's mirrorless cameras, you can hear them. You can hear it. If you're not able to hear the camera and you're say in studio, lots of times you'll see the flash. The flash will go or whatever it is. But most of the times you can hear it. So you pose, click, pose, click, pose, click. I kind of feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I can't iterate how important it is to try your timing and to move quickly and to think of it almost like dance class. So that's basically what flow posing is. And full body, moving away from ecom into social, you do get the advantage of being able to do more. Think less Coco Roche though, not quite there. I'm sure most of you, if you're interested in modeling, as you all very much so are, have probably seen videos of Coco posing. Think a little bit less like that. She's amazing, but it's a kind of a different style, which we will get into later on. That's what we're going to deal with later on in the weeks. But I feel like I've thrown a lot of information at you, and I do want to check in and see if anybody has any questions, anything like that. Okay, no questions. That's okay. I feel like I have thrown a lot of information at you. So if you do find after this you do have a question, feel free to DM me. If it's short enough, I will do my best to answer it in a DM. If it's a longer winded question, I will answer it next week. In fact, if you have any questions about commercial modeling in general, please email them to me or DM them to me. This is part 1 of a 2-part lesson. Next week, we're going to delve into what I keep saying be light and airy, and I didn't really tell you what that meant. So next week, we're going to delve into smiles and what it means to be light and airy and how to present in a light and airy way. This was more heavily focused on what flow is. So I will be answering any questions that you have next week about what I've been talking about. So, okay, looks like I have a question. Do you get to keep some of the clothes? Depends. So it sort of depends on your payment. I would say most of the time, no, but that's usually a good thing. Most of the time when they get you to keep clothes, it's because they don't want to pay you in real money. They'll be like, you can do work for product, right? And when I was first starting, I definitely did work for product, because I sort of went, oh, well, I need clothes anyways, right? But at the end of the day, you can't buy food with clothes. So it can be nice, especially when you're first starting, or if say it's a really low commitment shoot. There has been shoots that I've done for like really tiny brands that I really believed in, where they're like, we'll give you some clothes. And I've done it because usually either I care about what they're doing or I really like their product and I want some. But generally, no. But it's a good thing because that means they'll probably pay you in real money, which is better for rent and food and all those sorts of things. You do tend to get the odd gift, but unfortunately it tends to be like a lipstick they used or something like that. In Runway, they'll give you a lot of gifts, but that's because they don't pay you in real money. So in general, in my opinion, it's better to get paid. But yeah, sometimes you do get to keep it. Not generally a good thing though. But yeah, totally. I hope that answered your question. And so we are kind of wrapping up here because I know the last week I said this as well, and I keep saying this is I feel like when I throw too much information at you sometimes, it's kind of a lot. And I want you to be able to digest this and practice and think about what I said, and then we'll be able to have it in these little chunks, right? Easier for you to digest. So my biggest thing that I really want you all to do, pretty please, and it will help you in the final pose off, is to go home and practice. And don't practice once, practice more than once. If this is something that you want to do as your career, practice on a regular basis and you will see your skills get better. And when you get these better skills, you'll get hired more for more jobs, because most of the jobs that I've been able to get, they aren't casting calls. You know somebody. They went, Paige did a great job when we were doing this shoot, and now I'm going to contact her agent and we're going to hire her for this next shoot. So as you develop these skills, you'll just build up more clientele and more reputation and all that kind of stuff. And as you build up these skills, it's through practice, which kind of leads me to my next reminder. So I'm just reminding you guys all that I don't think there is anybody this week that is brand new, but some of you are catching up from, say, last week. Do remember to complete all of these classes to enter the final pose off. Commercial modeling, this is basically what you're going to do. We're going to try and do a bit of a mixture of high fashion and commercial in the pose off, but you are going to be modeling for a local brand. Chai Fashion's one of my favorites. It is a sustainable clothing brand. We're dealing with the Bay Center branch. They do have a few locations. So this will be a chance for you to practice your actual commercial work, because we will be shooting in studio and I'll be making sure to get some good e-com looking photos for your portfolio. So practice this. And then if you win the pose off, you're going to get some, in my opinion, killer, because I'm organizing it, ecom example photos of commerce photos. So just reminding you of that final pose off at the end. This is very applicable to that one. And next week we will go over smiles. So smiles, light and airy. We'll do part 2 of commercial modeling. Don't miss it. Of course, you're not gonna miss any of them if you want to be in the pose off. But next week is also very important. I think this week and next week are going to be the most practical, the most money-making lessons for you. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my intro into commercial modeling. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope that it was very informative and I didn't just like blurt too much information at you. If anything wasn't very digestible, then just feel free to send me a DM, send me an email. We are doing part 2 next week, so we will definitely delve into any questions that you have, and I'm gonna be a nag and go home and practice. Okay. I'm really happy that you guys have joined me this week. It's meant a lot to me, as well as every week, and I will see you next Saturday.